I never imagined that the day I discovered the truth would end up reshaping every fiber of my existence. I still remember that quiet evening when a stray comment over the phone, a slip in conversation, shattered the illusion of trust one had built around my life. It was then that I learned Diane, the woman I had vowed to love and cherish, was entangled in a secret affair with none other than her boss, Robert Walsh. The revelation was like a lightning strike, sudden, painful, and utterly transformative. In the wake of that discovery, I found myself drowning in a chaotic blend of hurt and fury. The love I once held for Diane was now replaced with an icy determination. I needed undeniable proof, something that would not only confirm the betrayal, but also serve as the catalyst for the retribution I was planning. It wasn't enough to simply confront her. I had to expose the truth in a way that was irrevocable. The plan began to take shape during long, sleepless nights filled with bitter introspection. I decided to turn our home, the very sanctuary that once symbolized our shared dreams, into a vault of evidence. With a mind sharpened by resolve and a heart steeled by betrayal, I set out to install hidden cameras and microphones in every conceivable corner. Each device was meticulously positioned to capture the raw, unfiltered reality of our daily lives. Every click and the hum of electronic wires became a testament to my unyielding determination to document every moment that might betray Diane's secret. As I moved about the house, the weight of my actions pressed down on me. There was a profound irony in using the privacy of our shared home against its inhabitants, but in that moment, I felt justified by the need to expose the deceit. I envisioned each room as a silent witness, ready to record the inevitable unraveling of a carefully maintained lie. Every shadow, every whispered conversation could now become evidence, a piece of the puzzle that confirmed my worst fears. That night, as I finalized the placement of the last device, a surge of both dread and anticipation rushed through me. I was no longer a passive observer in my own life. I had transformed into a guardian of secrets, an unwilling sentinel standing at the crossroads of betrayal and revenge. The hidden eyes and ears now lurking in every corner of our home were not just instruments of surveillance. They were extensions of my resolve, silent allies in a battle that was as much about reclaiming my dignity as it was about unmasking a painful truth. Every moment that followed was charged with a mixture of foreboding and determination. I kept a careful log of every minor anomaly in the recordings, every sound that deviated from the norm. The devices became my constant companions, a reminder of the lengths I was willing to go to find closure in a world that had suddenly become unrecognizable. As I lay awake at night, listening to the hum of the hidden microphones, I couldn't help but wonder if the evidence would someday serve as the final nail in the coffin of our broken trust, or if it would merely fuel a fire of vengeance that could never be extinguished. The quiet hum of the devices in our home was both a comfort and a curse, a constant reminder that the truth, no matter how painful, had been set in motion. And as the days turned into nights and back into days again, I prepared myself for the moment when the secret world behind our closed doors would finally come to light. The days that followed were consumed by a relentless, almost clinical determination. Every moment of solitude became an opportunity to review the recordings and piece together a narrative that would leave no doubt about the betrayal. I sat before a bank of monitors, each screen flickering with snippets of what was meant to be our shared life, now transformed into a gallery of deceit. It wasn't long before the evidence began to reveal a haunting pattern. The cameras had captured intimate meetings between Diane and Robert in every corner of our home. The marital bed, once a symbol of our dreams and shared secrets, had become the stage for their clandestine rendezvous. I watched, unable to tear my eyes away, as the very bed where I had once felt safe was turned into a silent accomplice to their betrayal. But the deception didn't end there. In the kitchen, where the aroma of home-cooked meals once promised warmth and unity, the table bore witness to furtive exchanges and whispered plans. Late one night, as I replayed the recordings, I saw them sitting close together at the table. their heads bent in secretive conversation, as if plotting a future that did not include me. The very place that had once been the heart of our family gatherings was now a cold stage for deceit. Perhaps most jarring was the discovery in the living room. The rug, a vibrant piece of fabric that had added character and comfort to the space, had unwittingly become a canvas for their hidden meetings. The subtle shifts and patterns in the recordings revealed a choreography of intimacy, with the rug absorbing every whispered laugh, every stolen glance. It was as if every inch of our home had been transformed into a vault of their secrets. I found myself obsessively poring over the recordings, each playback deepening my understanding of the betrayal while simultaneously hardening my resolve. With every piece of evidence, my plan for revenge grew bolder. The clarity with which the cameras documented every forbidden moment left no room for ambiguity. I knew that soon, I would hold in my hands the undeniable proof of their duplicity, a proof that would shatter the fragile illusions of trust they had so carefully constructed. Yet, as I reviewed the tapes, a strange duality of emotions began to creep over me. There was satisfaction in unearthing their secrets, a vindication in exposing every hidden moment, but also a creeping sadness. The evidence was more than just a record of betrayal. It was a chronicle of lost moments, of a home that had been overtaken by deceit. Every silent confession captured by the cameras was a reminder of the life I once believed in, a life now reduced to a series of incriminating images. In the quiet of the night, as I sat with the hum of the electronic devices in the background, I realized that this journey into the depths of our shared past was irrevocable. The recordings had transformed from a tool of investigation into a testament of a broken bond. They were the silent witnesses to the unraveling of trust, each frame and sound bite echoing the profound betrayal that had become my new reality. Every detail, the way Diane's eyes flickered with guilt as she looked away, the furtive smile shared between her and Robert, the intimate exchanges on the once sacred bed, reinforced the painful truth. I now held the power to expose every carefully concealed secret. With this evidence, I would not only confront the deception head-on, but also set in motion a series of events that would leave no doubt about the consequences of betrayal. I sat back, letting the gravity of it all sink in. The devices I had so meticulously installed had become the chroniclers of a hidden life, and each playback deepened the fissure in my soul. Yet, in that same moment of despair, I found a flicker of resolve, a promise that justice, however bitter, was inevitable. The recordings were not just evidence of infidelity. They were the blueprint of my impending retribution, a detailed map that would guide me toward the reckoning that awaited them all. After gathering the damning evidence, I knew the next step wasn't just about emotional revenge. It was about securing my future, ensuring that every asset we once shared would no longer serve as a reminder of her betrayal. It began on a rainy evening when I sat alone at the kitchen table, a stack of legal documents and financial statements spread out before me. The cold click of my keyboard and the hum of the laptop became the soundtrack to a new phase in my life, a phase where I took back control bit by bit. I started by meticulously changing the beneficiaries on all our insurance policies and retirement accounts. Every form I signed was a declaration of independence, a statement that the life I was reclaiming would no longer be shared with someone who had so thoroughly betrayed my trust. Each alteration felt like a small, yet significant, act of self-preservation, a way to ensure that if anything happened to me, at least I wouldn't leave her with the spoils of our shared dreams. The next move was even more decisive. I transferred over $150,000 from our joint account into a new, carefully concealed account that was solely in my name. I remember the moment vividly. The digital transfer confirmation blinking on the screen like a beacon of irreversible change. The weight of that sum, once a symbol of our combined aspirations, was now entirely mine to manage, free from the ties of deceit. I was acutely aware that every dollar moved was a declaration that my life, my finances, and ultimately my future were no longer hers to manipulate. But I wasn't done yet. The final act in my financial coup was to cancel all our joint credit cards and replace them with accounts exclusively in my name. It was a move designed to sever any lingering financial entanglements. I watched as the applications were processed and the joint liabilities vanished one by one. With each cancellation, I felt a mixture of liberation and foreboding. Liberation because I was no longer tethered to a past built on lies, and foreboding because I knew that every action had its own unpredictable consequences. I had orchestrated these changes with the precision of someone who'd rehearsed every detail over countless sleepless nights. Yet, as I combed through bank statements and received confirmations from financial institutions, I began to suspect that these actions might have consequences far beyond what I had anticipated. Whispers in my mind hinted that Diane was already making moves of her own, perhaps setting her sights on reclaiming a semblance of control over our shared assets. I couldn't shake the thought that my calculated maneuvers might be just one move in a much larger, more complex game she intended to play. Even so, I pushed forward with unwavering determination. I was already committed to this path, one that severed the bonds of our past and marked a new chapter where I would be the sole architect of my destiny. Every electronic confirmation and every cancellation email felt like a nail in the coffin of our former life. I reveled in the sense of empowerment that came with each decisive act, even as I wondered what unexpected twists might lie ahead. Late at night, as I reviewed my newly organized financial portfolio, I couldn't help but ponder the irony of it all. The very numbers that once represented a shared future were now the instruments of my solitary retribution. Every change, every transfer was a calculated risk, a step that could either fortify my newfound independence or spiral into unforeseen complications. Yet, the thought of leaving Diane with nothing but the ruins of our past betrayal was a bitter comfort I was willing to embrace. In those moments of reflection, a chilling realization began to crystallize in my mind. I had turned a deeply personal betrayal into a strategic conquest. With every beneficiary change, every transfer, and every new credit card issued solely in my name, I was not merely protecting my finances. I was constructing an unassailable fortress against a past that had been built on lies. And while I anticipated that the fallout might bring more surprises than I had foreseen, I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The game was set, and with my assets securely under my control, I was poised to play every card in my favor. The day I decided to make my private torment public arrived with a surreal sense of liberation and dread. I woke before dawn, the air crisp and carrying a weight of inevitability. I knew that the path I was about to take was as dangerous as it was cathartic, a final act meant to expose the treachery that had upended my life. Under the early morning light, I hauled out the very items that had once symbolized the heart of my shattered home. The bed, the table, the rug, each piece held memories of a past I could no longer bear. I dragged them onto the lawn, the cool grass a stark contrast to the burning anger inside me. With deliberate care, I arranged them in a layout that mimicked the intimacy of our former sanctuary. The bed was placed in a way that suggested the intimacy of a secret, the table set to resemble those countless nights of whispered plans, and the rug spread out as if inviting a viewer to step into a scene of betrayal. But I didn't stop at a mere display. I affixed signs near each piece of furniture, their messages clear and unyielding. The signs detailed every facet of the betrayal: my wife's infidelity with her boss, the times and places that I had painstakingly recorded. The words were blunt and uncompromising, designed to leave no room for misinterpretation. In large, bold print, I posted photographs capturing those damning moments. My wife and her lover caught in the act. The photos were enormous, each image a frozen testament to the deceit that had destroyed the life we once shared. Every detail was laid bare for anyone passing by. As the morning progressed, curious neighbors and onlookers began to emerge from their homes. At first, they hesitated, their faces a mix of shock and curiosity as they took in the sight of our former life on display. Then, as the reality of the situation sank in, small clusters of people formed. They stood in silent judgment, phones in hand, snapping pictures and reading every word on the signs. Some exchanged whispers with each other, their eyes wide with a combination of disbelief and intrigue. I watched from a distance, hidden in the shadow of my own resolve, as the scene unfolded like an exhibition of raw, unfiltered truth. The public spectacle was both surreal and deeply satisfying. Here, on my own lawn, I had transformed personal agony into a dramatic statement, a statement that no secret could remain hidden. I felt the bitter sting of betrayal morph into a strange, almost artistic retribution. The very items that had once been part of my domestic life were now repurposed as symbols of justice. Every gaze that fell upon the bed, table, and rug was a silent confirmation that the truth was impossible to ignore. It was as if time had slowed down. Each pause, each click of a camera shutter, resonated with the finality of my actions. The onlookers' reactions were unpredictable. Some wore expressions of pity, others of disbelief, and a few even appeared to admire the boldness of the act. Their mixed responses fueled my determination further. With each passing moment, I could feel the power of the truth reverberating beyond the confines of our home, reaching out to the community that had once been oblivious to our private lives. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, absorbing the reality of my actions. I had laid bare the intimate details of our life, details that were never meant for public consumption. And yet, in doing so, I reclaimed a part of myself that had been lost in the shadows of deception. The bed, the table, the rug, and the unmistakable images of infidelity were no longer just objects or photographs. They were the instruments of my final reckoning. As the crowd slowly dispersed and the early visitors turned into lingering murmurs of gossip, I retreated into the silence of the aftermath. The scene on the lawn was a haunting tableau, a stark reminder that in the quest for justice, the line between personal vengeance and public spectacle can blur in the most extraordinary ways. In that moment, I knew there was no turning back. I had chosen a path that left no room for reconciliation or denial, a path that demanded the truth be seen by all, no matter the cost. In the aftermath of my public display, I felt an urgency to widen the scope of my retribution. I couldn't let the truth remain locked within the confines of my shattered home and the whispers of the neighborhood. The next step was clear. I had to expose Robert Walsh to those who shared in the betrayal, even if he had never imagined that his own wife might soon become the harbinger of his downfall. I gathered every ounce of damning evidence, the recordings, the photos, the timestamps, and prepared a dossier so meticulously detailed that it left no room for denial. With a grim determination, I sent everything directly to Robert's wife. I made sure the message was unequivocal. Here lay proof of the unethical, secret life her husband had been leading, a life built on corporate deceit and personal betrayal. I could almost hear the shock in her silence after reading every incriminating detail. The fallout was almost immediate. Robert's world, which had once been built on a foundation of carefully curated facades, began to crumble. His employer, bound by strict corporate ethics and an unwavering commitment to transparency, launched an internal investigation as soon as the evidence surfaced. The corporate hierarchy, which had long turned a blind eye to unethical behavior when it was hidden behind closed doors, had no choice but to act. Within days, Robert was unceremoniously dismissed from his high-profile position, his reputation reduced to ashes before the eyes of his peers. As if that weren't enough, the ripples of my actions extended further into the private realm of Robert's life. His wife, now confronted with the undeniable truth of her husband's betrayal, had her own reckoning to face. Unable to endure the humiliation and the unraveling of her carefully constructed image, she took matters into her own hands. The shock and betrayal compelled her to file for divorce, seeking not only a clean break, but also demanding an alimony of $10,000 per month. A stark financial severance from a man who had now become a symbol of corporate and personal treachery. I observed the fallout with a mixture of satisfaction and somber reflection. Every step I had taken, from the covert installation of cameras to the dramatic public display, was now converging into a moment of undeniable consequence. The evidence, once hidden in the dark corners of my home, had ignited a chain reaction that dismantled the lives of those who had thought they could keep their secrets locked away. I couldn't help but feel that, in exposing the betrayal, I had also forced the world to confront its own complicity in ignoring the signs. There was a bitter irony in knowing that the actions of one man, once shrouded in deceit and manipulation, could be laid bare with such devastating clarity. I never anticipated that my quest for personal retribution would not only serve as my catharsis, but also become the catalyst for Robert's complete downfall. His wife's demand for a hefty alimony was not just a financial claim. It was her declaration that the cost of infidelity extended far beyond the personal and into the very fabric of their lives. In the silent aftermath of these events, as the ripple effects continued to reshape the lives of those involved, I found a strange solace in the knowledge that I had, in my own way, reclaimed control. Every step, every calculated move, had led to this point where the consequences of betrayal were met with an equally relentless pursuit of justice. And as I sat alone, the weight of what had transpired pressed upon me, not as a burden, but as an affirmation that sometimes the truth demands to be seen, no matter how disruptive or devastating its revelations may be. The final confrontation with Diane was as charged as it was inevitable. We met in the sterile confines of a lawyer's office, a space where our shared past was dissected with clinical detachment. Diane's face, a mix of defiance and regret, tried to muster justifications, explanations that I no longer cared to hear. She pleaded, insisting that the circumstances had spiraled beyond her control, that the affair was a desperate mistake born of loneliness and insecurity. But every word, every feeble attempt at rationalizing her actions, only deepened the chasm between us. I had long since reached the point where betrayal could no longer be cloaked in excuses, and I made it clear that there was nothing to forgive, nothing to mend. In that moment of raw finality, she signed the divorce papers. The terms were harsh in their own way. Diane would retain the house and, more painfully, custody of our children. The decision struck me with the weight of irreversible consequence. The home we had built together, now a battleground of shattered dreams, was no longer mine to claim. It was a bitter reminder that some losses cut deeper than others, that even the most carefully laid plans can unravel with a single, careless lie. With the legalities behind us, I found myself stepping into an unfamiliar and stark reality. I packed the few belongings that remained mine and moved into a modest apartment that was worlds apart from the life I had known. The space was small and bare, yet it offered the kind of solitude I desperately needed to collect my thoughts and attempt to heal. In those early days of isolation, I oscillated between a numbing grief and a fierce resolve to rebuild. Every morning, as I sat by the window watching the city wake up, I wrestled with the overwhelming sense of loss, not just of a partner, but of the future I had envisioned. There were moments when the memories of our shared past threatened to drown me, each echo a reminder of what had been taken away by deception. Yet, amid the silence of that small apartment, I began to understand that recovery wasn't a linear process. It was a gradual, jagged climb out of a darkness that had once seemed all-consuming. I started to take small steps toward reclaiming my identity. I returned to old hobbies that had long been buried under the weight of our shared life. I began meeting with a therapist who helped me untangle the mess of betrayal and self-doubt that had accumulated over the years. Slowly, I learned that while the scars of betrayal might never fully fade, they could become part of a new, more resilient version of myself. The divorce, with all its finality, forced me to confront the uncomfortable truth that revenge and retribution, while momentarily satisfying, could never restore what had been lost. The public spectacle, the financial maneuvers, the carefully orchestrated downfall of those who had wronged me, all of it had led to this quiet moment of reckoning. I was left with a bitter solitude, but also with a fragile seed of hope that perhaps, in time, I could learn to trust again. In the solitude of my new apartment, I began to reflect on the twisted trajectory that had brought me here. The shock of Diane's betrayal, The carefully executed plans of vengeance and the public exposure of secrets had all culminated in a life that was painfully real and irrevocably changed. Yet, amid the rubble of what had once been, there lay the potential for renewal. Every evening, as I closed the door on another day filled with the ghosts of my past, I reminded myself that recovery was not about forgetting the pain or erasing the memories. It was about learning to live with them, to harness that pain as a catalyst for personal growth. Even as the weight of divorce settled over me, I recognized that this new chapter, painful as it might be, was also a chance to rebuild my life from scratch. I found solace in the small victories. A conversation with a friend that reminded me of my worth, a moment of quiet introspection that brought clarity to my muddled thoughts, a simple walk in the park that allowed me to breathe away from the echoes of old betrayals. It was in these moments of vulnerability that I discovered a stubborn resilience. Though Diane's justifications and the finality of our separation stung with every recollection, they also forced me to face a fundamental truth. The past was immutable, but the future was mine to shape. In that humble apartment, with its sparse furnishings and echoing silence, I began the painstaking process of piecing together a life that was truly my own. And while the journey toward recovery was fraught with uncertainty and lingering sorrow, I clung to the belief that every scar was a testament to survival, a marker of the relentless pursuit of hope, even in the wake of irrevocable loss. Looking back on everything, the aftermath of my decisions has reshaped not only my life but the lives of everyone involved. Robert's downfall was as total as it was swift. In a matter of weeks, the evidence I had so meticulously gathered unraveled his carefully constructed world. He lost his job in the wake of a brutal internal investigation, and the public scandal left his marriage in tatters. His wife, once his steadfast partner, could no longer tolerate the duplicity. Now, Robert is left not only without employment or the stability of a home, but also burdened by a staggering $75,000 in legal fees, a heavy price for his transgressions. Then there's Diane. Once a confident real estate powerhouse, she has been forced to face the consequences of her choices. The high stakes and glamour of her former career have vanished, replaced by a much humbler existence. Now, she works as a receptionist, a role that stands in stark contrast to the image she once projected. The fall from grace is a daily reminder of how quickly fortunes can reverse, and her new life is a far cry from the one she once led in real estate. As for me, the road to recovery is still under construction. The tumultuous journey through betrayal, revenge, and its aftermath has left me with deep emotional scars that I'm only beginning to understand. I'm not ready to open my heart to a new relationship just yet. The trust that was shattered takes time to rebuild. Instead, I'm focusing on what truly matters, my children. They are my anchor in this storm of change, and every effort I make is centered on providing them with the stability and love they need. Each day, as I juggle the responsibilities of parenting and work on healing my own wounds, I remind myself that growth often comes after immense pain. The journey is far from over, but with every passing day, I strive to rebuild my life on my own terms. The echoes of betrayal may linger, but in nurturing my children and rediscovering who I am outside of that tumultuous past, I'm slowly learning that a future forged from the ashes of loss can, eventually, be a future worth living.